Hi again, it's Rebecca with Am I Hungry? This is the third video in a 4-part series we're putting out on leading the shift from weight to well-being. Now the good news is that this paradigm shift is already underway, but it's still in the early stages. There are many individuals and organizations who continue to invest lots of time and money and energy in weight-focused programs and initiatives. This is understandable given the pervasive messaging and the frequently misinterpreted science around weight, weight loss, and the relationship between weight and health. You can be essential to the process of moving this paradigm shift along. But here's the thing I've learned about doing this work. Information and data alone are almost never enough to shift the thinking of an individual or change the direction of an organization. Now, don't get me wrong, it's really important for you to know the scientific conclusions around this. That's why I gave you those resources in those first 2 videos. But if you want to really lead this paradigm shift in your personal and professional world, you need something more than data and information. What you need is the ability to effectively and powerfully communicate these new paradigm messages to your clients, your patients, your colleagues, business leaders. You need to be able to communicate in a way that fosters trust and creates connection with other people, so there's openness to new ideas. Now, if this sounds overwhelming, don't worry. That's what this video is about. And at the end of the video, I'm going to share with you a resource that offers you more detail on the strategy that I'm about to share with you around powerful communication. So let me share with you 4 fundamentals of powerful communication, a strategy that you can use as structure for when you're thinking about having these conversations with others, a structure that can guide you during the conversations themselves. There are 4 parts of this strategy, and here they are. The first one is explore perspective. Then, connect with past experience. Then, reframe the solution. And finally, offer alternatives. Now, the cool thing about this 4-point strategy is that it can be used whether you're talking with an individual client or patient or even a friend or family member. It can also be used when you're talking with colleagues or organizational business leaders. The other cool thing is that the strategy is really based on powerful questions, on asking questions and listening actively. I've found in having these type of paradigm shifting conversations that if I can just ask the right questions and listen actively to what the person or group says in response to my questions, I'm more than halfway there. And many times, by answering powerful questions, they begin to make their personal or the business case for considering a non-diet, mindfulness-based, weight-neutral approach to eating and health. Okay, so the first step I mentioned in this powerful communication strategy is to explore perspective. Now, what we're talking about here is identifying the beliefs and attitudes of the person or group you're talking with, understanding what they know or what they think they know about eating and weight loss and health. It's important to start your conversation with exploring perspective for a couple of reasons. First of all, this will give you some information that you can use as a starting point. It will give you a frame of reference almost that will help you guide the rest of the conversation. The other reason it's important to explore perspective is because it means that you set a tone for the conversation, a tone of respect and inquiry and curiosity, rather than coming across to the person or group you're talking with as a know-it-all or someone who just has advice to give. Let me give you some examples of the type of questions that you might ask when you start exploring perspective. Now, with all of the questions, how you frame those questions is of course going to depend on if you're talking with an individual client or patient that you'd like to do some work with or that you are working with, or whether you're in a business setting talking with colleagues and organizational leaders. So in the first scenario, if you're talking to individual clients or patients, you might ask perspective questions like, what messages have you heard about healthy eating or weight loss or the relationship between weight and health? Whereas if you're talking in a business setting to colleagues or organizational leaders, you might say something like, what is it that you really want out of your employee well-being program? And how is it that you think weight or weight loss is connected to those outcomes or those important variables? Now, after you've asked these type of questions, the next thing to consider doing is to connect to past experience. So that's step number 2, connect to past experience. And what we're doing here is asking our audience to kind of think objectively about their past attempts with either personal diets or weight loss efforts, or larger organizational weight-focused initiatives. We want to get them thinking objectively about whether those past attempts have in fact created the sustainable long-term results they hoped for. Now let me give you a couple examples of questions that you could use to connect to past experience. With an individual client or patient or even a friend or family member, you might say something like, "What have you tried in the past to lose weight? How has that worked for you? Has it given you the sustainable long-term results that you were hoping for?" You might even ask something like, "What has it been like to be so focused in the past on eating and weight?" Now, in an organizational setting, your question might be broader. You might ask something like, "How have your weight-focused initiatives gone? What has happened long-term as a result of those weight loss programs?" Now, in my experience, when I ask questions like this, either individually or in an organizational setting, the answer falls along the lines of a story that sounds something like, "Well, it worked for a while, and then it didn't. It gave us short-term results, but not the long-term results we're hoping for." If that happens, as it's likely to, this may be a great place for you for the first time in the conversation to sprinkle in some of the important evidence and the information that you know that your audience may not. But here's a key point on this. When you're sharing evidence and data and facts and figures around why the conventional approach doesn't work and what to do instead, you want to make sure to do that in as non-threatening a way as possible. Nobody likes to feel like a fool for their past attempts. Nobody likes to be bombarded with too many facts and figures and statistics at once. So sprinkle your evidence in sparingly and make sure it's relevant to what your audience has just told you. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you're talking with a client or patient and you ask her, "How have your past weight loss attempts gone? How have those diets worked for you?" And perhaps she'll tell you a story about short-term weight loss and ultimate regain, or maybe some other experience she's had that has been less than she hoped for. You might respond by saying something like, "You know, you're not alone. That happens to a lot of people. In fact, the research indicates that for most people, diets and weight loss programs don't create sustainable changes in weight or health. In fact, what we've learned is that it's not you that's flawed, it's the approach that's flawed. We really need to consider a new approach." Okay, so once you've had the opportunity to explore perspective and connect to past experience, the conversation may be open for you to begin reframing the solution. Here's where you're going to direct the conversation in a new way, towards new paradigm thinking. Now, reframing is simply asking questions that get people thinking about an old situation in a new way. Now, reframing in this situation is done with the goal of helping individuals and organizations see that they can achieve their health and quality of life and organizational outcomes without a focus on weight loss programs and restrictive rules. In fact, those health and well-being and organizational outcomes and variables are more likely to be achieved in the long run without positioning weight as a proxy for health or an overfocus on weight loss. Here are a few examples of reframing questions that you might ask. With individuals, you might say something like, "Let's just forget about weight for a minute. Just kind of take it out of the picture. What does it mean to you to be living vibrantly? When you are living well and have a high quality of life, what does that look like for you?" Or one of my favorite questions to ask individuals is, "Let's say you never lost another pound, but you were finally able to find freedom and peace with food in your body. What would that mean for you?" Now, in an organization, you might reframe by asking something like, "What if you could actually better help employees address their struggles with eating and activity and self-care without positioning weight loss as a priority?" You can probably begin to see how this can shift the direction of the conversation. It will also likely open up space for you to get into the fourth step of this powerful communication strategy. And that fourth step is to offer alternatives. Clearly, we can't just tell our clients and patients and business leaders that the old conventional approach doesn't work. We really have to come to the conversation with some solutions in mind. And of course, the good news is that the solutions already exist. We just need to know how to talk about them and present them. Now, the details of this part of the conversation will depend on a variety of things. What your role or relationship with the client or patient is, what programs and initiatives are available to that person or to the group you're talking with. If you're talking with clients or patients, you want to share specific examples of how the mindfulness-based, weight-neutral, non-diet approach will be different than the conventional approach. You might even want to talk about how the process specifically will be different, the focus will be different, what the goals are, so they really get a sense for what the work that you'll be doing together is going to be like, and how that can potentially provide them with more freedom and satisfaction and overall well-being. Now, if you're talking with organizations, it's important to bring up solutions that you have vetted, programs and services that truly are non-diet, mindfulness-based, or weight-neutral, or all three, and that you know have been offered in other organizations with high rates of success. It will be helpful for business leaders to know that these solutions you're suggesting already exist, they're already being offered, and that you have evidence around them. We'll talk a little bit more about that fourth step of offering alternatives in the next video, which will be the last of this 4-part series. But let me just end by recapping the 4 steps of this powerful communication strategy. 1, explore perspective. 2, connect to past experience. 3, reframe the solution. And 4, offer alternatives. Now, if this powerful communication strategy has been interesting to you and resonates with you, I highly encourage you to check out the resource we have available for you as a part of this video. It's a guide. It's called Powerful Conversations to Lead the Shift from Weight to Well-Being. Not only does it provide a lot more detail about the 4 steps that I've talked about, but there's other extra bonus content in there, which I think you'll really enjoy. You can access that guide by clicking on the link below this video, and as always, read it, feel free to share it with others. After you've done that, you're welcome to contact me with questions or to share your ideas or insights. My email is rjohnson@amihungry.com. Now, before we close, let me tell you one last thing. In the 4th video, we have something really cool for you. We have a gift to thank you for your investment of time and energy into this video series. So make sure you join us shortly for video 4, where we'll talk a little bit more about offering alternatives, and I'll make that easier for you, and we'll also offer you a thank you gift. That brings us to the end of this one. Thanks for being with us. I'll see you next time.